And I love him because 15 minutes later, he was still showing me how to cut the key. And I liked that because he was passionate about it. And I was glad I gave him 15 minutes of my time, learn out how about a key goes, because he gave me a special key. It's got a little green light on it. It's the coolest thing you've ever seen. I didn't even know that they made it like that. But he was passionate about what he did because he understood his mission. And the thing that stuck out in my mind as I look back there and this whole thing kind of come to me is after we got that, he said, I've got to go because I've got someplace else to go. Someone else has got a lock they need fixed. He understood his mission. And he wasn't about to spend a half a day wasting his time talking to me even though I offered him lunch, because he understood my mission is I've got to go to another place and do the same thing to complete my task. A mission keeps you from being distracted. If you get distracted easily, it tells me you're not grounded in your mission. Don't raise your hands. I don't want to embarrass you. If you get distracted in praise and worship, evidently you don't know the mission is to praise God. If somebody's offbeat or a flat note or the music is too loud, if that distracts you, guess what? You don't know the mission. If you give up easily, it tells me that you are more convinced in not knowing than you are knowing. You've got to know the mission. Somebody say mission. I'm trying to get you to understand today, and you're doing a wonderful job. Mission. He is purposed in himself, the mysteries of his will. Let me just go behind a tree here today as I'm hiding. I'm camouflaged. Anybody see me? Another way to determine the mission is to understand the weapons that you have. And I know I look dangerous, don't I? To understand your mission, you have to understand the weapons that God gave you. And each of us have a weapon because everyone has to fight at some time or another. What is the thing that God uniquely gave you and anointed you to do that you would do even if they didn't pay you for it? Daniel, he told me he loves working on locks. I really believe that. Do you, Daniel? He likes what he does. Jeff, he loves playing the guitar. More than that, he just loves music so much, he's got a recording studio. Most of you probably didn't even know that. And he works on anything music related. Amps, guitars, you name it. He does all that. And he's passionate about it. I was looking on Tim's MySpace page, and he's got pictures of all of his amps and everything in his room and all, because he loves it and he's passionate about it. And guess what? When we come in here for praise team practice, we don't have to say, Tim, have you learned the song? Because he already did, because he loves to do that. Because those are their weapons. What is your weapon? I brought this out here because this just so happens to be the very same mop and bucket. And there was a time in my life the only weapon I had was this mop and bucket. And you can laugh and snigger at me, but listen to me before you shut me off. My mother, who's worked here for pretty much most of my life, would drag me here at the age of 11 to this church. And this was back in the day before we had carpet in here. It was actually a basketball goal right there where that event is. And when I was getting on her nerves bouncing the basketball, she'd come and put it up, and I got bored around here. And this was back in the day before iPods and MP3s and mini discs and CDs, but it was before the time of the radio and the record and the 8-track. It was the time of cassettes. I said that because I'm trying to get somebody to smile. The only thing I had was a cassette player and a mop and a bucket. And because I was so hyperactive and energetic anyway, I'd put my little headphones on, and I would swing this mop like nobody's business. I'll never forget the first day they asked me to mop the halls. I was like, mop the halls? I thought you said this was going to be fun. And I took my mop, and I just kind of went like this, just kind of throwing it around, just not really paying attention. And they said, well, you have to put water on it. So I put the water on it, and then I was doing this here, and then they said, well, you've got to wring it out a little bit. So I was just going through the motions, just kind of doing this, just not really paying attention, just wanting to get it over with. So I started out just doing this right here, just kind of walking down the hall, not putting my heart into it. And I was listening to the music and trying to pass some time. Hated it. Every second. Hated it. Did not want to be here. And if you know my mother for any extended period of time, you know that she has a great knack at staying so much later than she should. So I'm not talking about going home at 3:34. I'm talking like 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night with a 30-minute drive one direction home. I would get home and be so utterly terrified over the spot that I could not stay home by myself. And this was when we lived next to Mike and Sherry. When she wasn't home, I cried because I knew I couldn't stay at their house. A lot of times I just knock on their door and say, can I swim in your pool for 4 hours? Just let me do something. Let me just find some kind of entertainment till Mom gets home. And my mom, she wouldn't let me stay home, so she drugged me to the church. So I'm in church, and I'm just mopping. I'm just kind of doing this right here. And through the process, I kept listening to these tapes, and I'll never forget. I found a box of preaching tapes underneath the little bars out there we have now. And I made a mistake and put one in one day and listened to this guy. Don't even remember his name. The only message I remember is he said, understanding your purpose. Here I was 11 and a half years old listening to this preaching tape about this guy talking about purpose. And he said, whatever you do, you have to put your whole heart into it. That's the only thing I remember about it. So I'm here with a mop, and I'm thinking, okay. So I put both hands, and I tried it like that. And I was like, you know what, that's all right. And I missed the spot, so I had to come back over here. And so I was trying to get the spot out, and I was learning. And before I knew it, I wasn't happy with anything. So I started all the way back from the beginning, and I started in the corner. And as I did this, I learned there's kind of a rhythm to it. And you can swing, and just, if you do it just right, you can smack the wall, and it just sounds good. And I'm just sitting here mopping, and I started praying just a little bit because I got convicted. And I had to say, you know, God, I'm just sorry that I didn't put my heart into it. And I just thank you that, you know, I've got a mom that does love me because she could have left me on a street corner or something else, but I just appreciate that. And, you know, I'm thankful that when I get done, I get to go play some more basketball, and I just appreciate you for giving me legs and just making it possible for me to go and play basketball. And, you know, I just thank you for my friends and stuff. And could you help me with that test at school on the other day? And you know, tomorrow I've got that other test, and if you could really help me pull that through. And before I knew it, I'd gone around the hall 3 times and had to stop praying. And I didn't even know what had come over my life. Something had just kind of got inside of me before I knew it. And so what I do, I found me another tape, and I put it in. And after I got through the halls, I said, you know what? Even though no one even comes in this sanctuary, this place has got to be clean before I bounce that ball. So I got some more water, didn't even put soap in it, didn't even do nothing. Just got some water. I mopped this whole sanctuary in here. And every day, that was my only task when I came. The halls weren't even dirty, but I was still doing it anyway because it was the only thing I knew how to do for God. And through the process, somehow, some 10 years later, all those preaching tapes I heard evidently is coming out because I haven't stopped shutting up since. And there was a time in my life when the only weapon I had was a mop. And I went from a mop to pushing a shopping cart full of things in the airport, carrying bags, because I went from the mop boy to the errand boy. And I began to iron shirts for the preacher and wash his underwear and drive the car and do all those things I didn't really want to do. And as I was doing it, all I can remember is I got to do it with everything in me is like I'm doing it to the Lord. So then I graduated, and I went from the errand boy to the evangelist boy. And I started preaching, but couldn't preach my way out of a paper bag. And I didn't get that many invitations at the beginning. But because I kept my heart right and I understood whatever I did, I had to put my all in it for God. And then one day they called me and said, will you come pastor a church? And I'm thinking, I'm the same boy that the only thing he could do is push him up. And here I am. And for me, my whole mission began in understanding whatever you have in your hands, you have to use it. Yes. Yes. This was my weapon. What has God given you for your weapon? I can't be ashamed of this mop. I wouldn't be here to read that Bible. Because I learned how to use the mop, God taught me how to use the Bible. And that's just my story. What's your story? Maybe for you, it was you got in trouble. And you had to do some community service or something. And you interned, or you worked here, or you worked there. And through the process, you found something you like to do. So something inside of you calls you to get that job and do that, or go that course. Or maybe you are active in sports, and that's the only thing you could do is play sports. And you just did your best, and you did your all, and you ran as hard as you could run, and you went the extra mile, and you practiced, and you practiced, and you practiced, and it carried you through school. But through the process, guess what? You can still use whatever your weapon was to help somebody now. I love it when Colton, he's not in the back now, he was here one day, and he was trying to mop. I just couldn't wait to grab this thing and say, let me show you how to do it. I've had some experience at this. All of us have to understand our weapon. Yes. What's your weapon? If I move on today, and we talked about mission, we'll continue this another time. Another word you have to know to understand about your mission that involves the word is submission. Submission. That's the word most of us use for the women, but it's different.